let's look at a quick and simple way of adding rain into a scene. So behind here I've got some clouds. That's already done. It's if you go look at Kristof Dedene's channel, that's Kristof Dedene. He'll show you how to do a cloud thing like this. I also have some hills in the background which you can just barely see through the rain. And then a little bit of scene in the foreground. Scene in the foreground is pretty irrelevant. So how can we do rain like this really quickly and simply? So what I have is just two planes here. Let's hide each one of these. So this is the background plane, which as you can see gives you the ability to see all these hills. So the backgrounds is, there isn't much rain at the top, there's a lot at the bottom. That's to kind of simulate the more you look down through a bunch of rain, the more you're going to be seeing. And so it blocks things out. And so let's bring that plane back in. It looks like this. And in the foreground, I have another essentially plane. You can see I've kind of wrapped this a little bit so I get better camera angles, but you can do it with just a plane. And so let's hide it and see what that looks like without it. So now you've got just a tiny little raindrops, which you can kind of see a little bit of a noise pattern here, but you get more down at the bottom covering the landscape, less kind of at the top so you can see the clouds and things. So let's bring those foreground drops back in. And so together these two planes end up looking like this, which gives you a pretty good rain effect. Okay, so let's look at the node setup here. So the foreground plane looks like this. Very simple. Just your texture coordinate, UV going into a mapping node where I've changed the values. X is pretty high, Y is greater than 1, Z you can just leave alone because it's on a plane, Z doesn't actually do anything. This goes into a noise texture, scale 4, detail 3, roughness 0.1, distortion 1.5. Put that into a color ramp, and now if we look at what we do with the color ramp, we can kind of get a sense here. So look up here in the corner, as I'm moving this black slider around, I get far more raindrops like that, or I can move it over here to get less raindrops. And so I've got that, I don't know, it looks like 0.572. Let's make it 0.5 just for the ease of understanding. The right side lets you kind of just determine how thick each raindrop is. And so, you know, you put these two close together, you get super thick raindrops. I guess that looks a bit more like really fast snow at that point. And so you want that over here. I've got it at about 0.8. And so between those two values, you get nice little raindrops. Now, what do we put the color into? We put it into the base color, we put it into the emission strength, and we put it into the alpha of a principal BSDF. And the rest of it's all pretty regular stuff, so I don't really have any subsurface going on. I have 0.5 on spec, not terribly important if you don't have a strong light, which I also don't. Roughness is at 0.1, sheen 0.5, clear coat roughness 0.03, transmission 0.6. So the transmission actually is a little bit important. That lets the background colors come through, and transmission roughness is fairly low. So the emission, you can actually change kind of the color. I have it at this sort of a bluish gray, right? You could make your raindrops be, you know, yellow, or you could make them be red, or whatever colors you want them to be. So I suggest on a rainy day, they're almost always going to be a grayish blue. And I've got this at about, you know, halfway down. I guess you could follow these hue saturation values, 0.5, 0.4, 0.2 for hue saturation value. And that goes into the material output. And that's it for the big raindrops. Now, the small raindrops are slightly more complicated. It's basically the same thing, but we add a little bit of extra down here at the bottom. And so what that is we're taking the UV output going into a separate mapping node. We're twisting it 90 degrees and we're putting that into a gradient texture. So when we do that, and depending on which direction your plane is facing, you might need Z negative 90 degrees or positive 90 degrees. So for me, negative 90 means that the light color of the gradient is at the bottom and the dark color of the gradient is at the top. And we can actually look at what that looks like by plugging this into the material output. Might actually be hard to see, but let's do it. Yeah, here we go. So the light is at the bottom, dark is at the top. And that's just the quadratic gradient going on there. Okay, so let's plug this back in here so we can see what we're doing. So the color ramp, similarly to the foreground raindrops, you can determine how many of them there are. Like here, there's very few. Again, this is actually looking a bit more like snow. And here, there's quite a lot. So when it's raining, there's going to be a lot of raindrops between you and things that are on the horizon. Fewer raindrops as you go up here, but also the raindrops are coming at you, so visually they look fewer. So that's why you can see a bit more up here and a bit less down here. Then also you can like tweak the other side. You can make it like super thick raindrops, or you can move it over here and make them a bit thinner and darker. The gradient texture, now what's going to go on here is we're going to plug that into the alpha, right? And so all that's going to do then is cause the raindrops to be more transparent up here and less transparent down there. And that's how we're tricking the eye into thinking there's, you know, more raindrops between us and the hills here and less between us and the sky up here. Otherwise, it's the same. This goes into the actual raindrops themselves go into the base color and the emission strength. And again, the emission color, I have the exact same color as the other raindrops. And that's it. Between these two planes, you get all the rain. So let's actually look at what it looks like without the planes at all in there. So this is it with no rain. And then this is it with rain. Quite nice. I enjoy the effect. All right, good luck. Thanks for watching, everyone.